Hello, I'm Africa 54 Managing Editor Vincent McCory in for the Yurt. Welcome to Africa 54. Here's what's coming up. At the International Court of Justice in The Hague, South Africa accuses Israel of genocide in Gaza. Israel says the claim is baseless. Hundreds of people die in massive flooding in the Democratic Republic of Congo and neighboring Congo-Brazzavill. And we'll examine Russia's expanding influence in Africa as it deepens ties with countries across the continent. All this and much more on today's Africa 54. We begin in The Hague, where South Africa's lawyers told judges at the United Nations top court on Thursday that Israel is determined to commit genocide in Gaza, and the nation pleaded with the court to order Israel to stop its military operations. Israel, however, is rejecting the argument. South Africa and Israel are both parties to the 1948 Genocide Convention, which obliges them not to not commit genocide and also to prevent and punish it. The International Court of Justice, South Africa, is demanding an emergency suspension of Israel's military campaign in the Palestinian enclave. South Africa points to Israel's sustained bombing campaign, which has killed over 23,000 people in the densely populated Gaza Strip, according to Hamas-run Gaza health authorities. Israel has vehemently denounced the accusations of genocide as baseless and accused Pretoria of playing court advocate of the devil for Hamas, the Palestinian Islamist militant group.
South Africa is not alone in drawing attention to Israel's genocidal rhetoric against Palestinians in Gaza. 15 United Nations special rapporteurs and 21 members of the United Nations working groups have warned that what is happening in Gaza reflects a genocide in the making and an overt intent to destroy the Palestinian people under occupation. Israel has a genocidal intent against the Palestinians in Gaza. That is evident from the way in which Israel's military attack is being conducted.
Well, Justice Minister Ronald Lamola says South Africa condemned Hamas' October 7th assault, but added that any attack, even one involving atrocious crimes, is not a justification for violations of the Genocide Convention. Ahead of the court proceedings, hundreds of pro-Israeli protesters marched close to the courthouse with banners saying, "Bring them home," referring to the hostages held by Hamas since it attacked Israel on October 7th. The pro-Israeli demonstrators marched in freezing temperatures in the city center, carrying Israeli and Dutch flags and posters with images of people taken hostage by Hamas.
Today, there are absurd accusations against Israel that it's committing genocide, while Hamas is committing crimes against humanity every day that my brother and the rest of the hostages are there. And no one is talking about it. And I'm here to raise the voice of my brother and the rest of the hostages.
He's held for nearly 100 days. We don't know if he gets treatment for his wound. We don't know the conditions that he's held in. We are worried. We miss him.
If anybody did a genocide, then it's Hamas. And what happens in Israel is a reaction. What happens to the Palestine is a reaction what every other country would have done if his own people were so much challenged.
Well, the issue of genocide also evokes issues central to the South Africa's own identity. Its governing party, the African National Congress, has long compared Israel's policies in Gaza and the West Bank to its own history under the apartheid regime of white minority rule, which restricted most blacks to homelands before ending in 1994. The hearings deal exclusively with South Africa's request for emergency measures ordering Israel to suspend its military actions in Gaza, while the court hears the merits of the case, a process which could take years to get a sense of what this means for human rights defenders. Paul O'Brien, the Amnesty International USA Executive Director, joins me from here in Washington. Mr. O'Brien, welcome to Africa 54. And if you can, please, if you hear me, yes, we'd like to get your thoughts on, first, when this case that is, has been brought on, what does it mean to you as human rights defenders, Amnesty International?
We welcome the case. We welcome the scrutiny that's been brought. We welcome the fact that it's come from South Africa, that has its history. And we believe it should give us, the international community and the human rights community, the time to determine whether, in fact, the elements of genocide under human rights law are occurring. We think there's a significant risk that it is occurring. All the warning signs are there, but we need time for that determination to be made, and so we welcome the leadership that South Africa has shown to bring this conversation to the international community and this investigation.
Yes, in terms of cessation of the operations, does South Africa have a strong case, given that Israel has said it has a mission? The mission is to defeat Hamas completely. Looks like we have some technical problems there with Mr. O'Brien. We hope maybe we can reach him or reconnect with him. But there we have him. Mr. O'Brien, if you can hear me, before we went to this technical issue, I was asking whether there is a case there. Do you sense that Israel is South Africa's case to force or to have Israel stop the operations in Gaza is strong enough, actually, for the court to make that kind of a... Okay, we've lost Mr. O'Brien now to the Democratic Republic of Congo, where the Congo River has risen to its highest levels in more than 60 years, causing flooding throughout the DRC and Congo-Brazzavill. Alice Rizzo has more. All right.
Residents in Democratic Republic of Congo use shovels to paddle their way through flooded streets, now clogged with discarded plastic bottles and other debris. The Congo River has risen to its highest level in more than 60 years and has caused flooding throughout Democratic Republic of Congo and neighboring Congo Republic. More than 300 people have died and 300,000 households have been affected over the past month, with tens of thousands of houses destroyed, authorities said. Climate activist Ketsia Pasu.
As an activist, I'm not very surprised to see that the water level is rising so much. What surprises me is the extent to which no measures are being taken for all those families who are just suffering the effects of climate change in the form of heavy flooding.
Ferry Moa, a hydrology specialist at the DRC Riverways Authority, said his office had flagged the high water level in late December, warning that almost the entire floodplain of the capital Kinshasa could be affected. On Wednesday, the river reached over 20 feet above sea level, just shy of the 1961 record, he told Reuters. Several neighborhoods in DRC's densely populated Kinshasa have flooded, as well as communities in more than a dozen provinces, the Social Affairs Ministry said. Kinshasa resident Juan Sin Lukula says the government doesn't take responsibility for the situation.
You get the impression that people are left to their own devices, building wherever they want, however they want. There's no urbanization. There's nothing being done. There are no gutters planned. And even if there are gutters, they are not maintained.
DRC's Social and Humanitarian Affairs Minister, Modeste Mutinga, told Reuters that a meeting will be held on Thursday to evaluate further humanitarian aid.
Alice Rizzo of Reuters filed that report. Nigeria is building a national park monument from crashed tusks in a symbol of the importance of elephants in the ecosystem and as a warning to wildlife traffickers. David Doyle has more.
Nigeria destroyed 2.5 metric tons of seized tusks on Tuesday as it pushes to protect its dwindling elephant population from rampant wildlife traffickers. The tusks, valued at nearly 10 billion naira or over $11 million, were crushed in the capital Abuja.
They are most beautiful on the elephants, and we should leave them on the elephant.
Mark Afua, West Africa representative for the Wild Africa Fund, said the seized ivory had been stockpiled over years.
And then today we have brought everything out to say we want to make a public show of destroying them to mark a tenure or an era where Nigeria says no to illegal wildlife trade, no to destruction of our biodiversity, no to destruction of our wildlife.
Over the past 3 decades, Nigeria's elephant population has plummeted from an estimated 1,500 to less than 400. Conservationists say that's due to poaching for ivory, habitat loss, and human-elephant conflict. Nigeria is considered a hub for gangs sending illegal African wildlife parts to Asia, according to law enforcement and experts. But counter-smuggling efforts have been stepped up in recent years.
And I can assure you that any perpetrator in illegal wildlife trade in Tusk, both those that go out to do the killings, those that do the buyings, and those that do the trading, when caught, will be fully dealt with according to the law.
Tuesday's event follows a similar one in October when officials destroyed 4 metric tons of seized pangolin scales valued at $1.4 million. Nigeria's Environment Minister, Isiaq Salako, said the powder from the elephant tusks would be used to build a symbolic national park monument, a reminder of the importance of elephants in the ecosystem.
An airplane carrying Gambia's national soccer team to compete in the Africa Cup of Nations tournament in Ivory Coast made an emergency landing, returning to Banjul after sudden loss of oxygen. The plane was only airborne for 9 minutes when the crew realized there were technical problems. The operating company for the flight, Air Côte d'Ivoire, is further assessing the situation to establish what caused the lack of oxygen and cabin pressure. Now, viewers, Mokbil Yebaro is covering AFCON, and he sent us this report a while ago from Abidjan.
We're here in Trashville in Abidjan, Ivory Coast, where the media accreditation team is giving out passes for the foreign journalists. Approximately 3,000 have been approved of the 5,000 that have applied. At the moment, it is a bit difficult for some, and for some others, it's a little bit easier. For myself, it's been a bit challenging, but we will get to the end of it. Mokbil Yabaro, Abidjan, Ivory Coast, for VOA Africa.
Right, Mokbil getting situated there to get us reporting throughout the AFCON games. Now, we're excited to hear what you think about Africa 54 and all of Africa programs on our website at voaafrica.com. Still to come, how Russia is expanding its influence in Africa. We'll be right back.
Hey folks, I'm Mokbil Yabaro, and I have some electrifying news for you. AFCON 2023 is here, and I'll be in Ivory Coast covering all things AFCON for VOA Africa. We'll have exciting coverage on radio, TV, and all of our digital platforms. Make sure you check out voaafrica.com for AFCON updates. Stay locked right here on VOA Africa.
In times of change, when the world seems uncertain, and what we hear doesn't reflect what we see, we seek the truth. When we are told only part of the story, we lose trust. In moments of crisis, our dreams, hopes, and wishes for a better tomorrow depends on a free press. At Voice of America, we bring you the stories that people take risks to see. We connect the world and unite it with truth. At Voice of America, we show you the whole picture.
In other news, the World Health Organization says it is gravely concerned by the worsening health crisis in Ethiopia, with drought, conflict and human displacement fueling disease and hunger. War erupted between government forces and rebels in Ethiopia's northern Tigray region in November 2020. A cessation of hostilities deal in November 2022 ostensibly ended the brutal two-year conflict. A Tunisian court released journalist Zaid El Hani late Wednesday with a 6-month suspended sentence, according to his lawyer. Hani was summoned by the police on December 28th and has been in custody since January 1st after criticizing the country's commerce minister during his radio show. And Al-Shabaab militants captured a United Nations helicopter carrying 2 Somali men and several foreigners when it made an emergency landing in an area controlled by the Islamist group on Wednesday. The aircraft encountered a defect shortly after taking off from Beledweyne city in central Somalia before it landed near Hedere village, according to Major Hassan Ali. Russia is expanding its influence in Africa, deepening ties in North Africa, the Central African Republic, and the Sahel. Russia is also rekindling its Cold War ties in Southern Africa. For more perspective, VOA's Paul Ndiho spoke with Paul Nanturia, a research associate at the Africa Center for Strategic Studies at National Defense University here in Washington.
Is trying to circumvent the sanctions that have been placed on it by the United States and other countries and organizations. And so the primary motivation is not really ideological, but it is economic. It is strategic. Russia wants to have continuing relevance at the international level, and wants to be able to prove to the United States and to Western countries that it still has diplomatic allies, it still has the ability to conduct international relations despite the sanctions. As you know, Putin has been indicted by the International Criminal Court. But I think what is important to note is that that effort is running into intense competition with the likes of China. China, as you know, has significantly expanded its engagements in Africa, economically, militarily, in terms of security, in terms of its loan instruments, finance instruments, as well as infrastructure. China is on the African continent in a very big way.
The diplomatic role between the West and Russia. Obviously, a lot of African countries came to the aid or supported Russia at the peak of the Ukraine war. Could that be one of the things where Russia is trying to say, hey, you guys stood by my side, now this is some kind of payback?
Russia is using pretty much the Chinese playbook by working with these African countries to rekindle those memories of the anti-colonial and anti-apartheid struggles, where, of course, the Soviet Union is one of those powers that that supported these struggles. And so we see that language coming back to the mainstream. We see that language being deployed by a number of African countries, by Russia itself. But what is very interesting is that Russia is following a Chinese playbook, because that's exactly what happened on the Chinese side. The only difference is that on the Chinese side, the instrument of influence was economic, mainly economic, and to some extent diplomatic and security. With Russia, it's the exact opposite, because economically speaking, Russia doesn't really have much to offer. China's trade with African countries is almost 7 times more than Russia's trade with African countries. But what Russia is putting on the table for these African countries is the use of its state-owned mercenaries.
We saw a little bit of that play out, especially during the most recent coups in West Africa. And some of those leaders who have taken power since then have strategically reached out to Russia to ask for support. You're looking at Mali, Burkina Faso, you are looking at Niger.
Fundamentally, it is also an indication of the lack of capacity, right? Because if you have capacity to respond to insurgent activity and to terrorist insurgents, as we saw in Mali and other places, then there will be no need to take a step as controversial as requesting a foreign power to supply mercenaries. Mercenaries do what they do for payment, right? So, with Russia's mercenaries, for instance, some of the payments are in foreign currency, but then they're also paid with access to mining operations, such as in the Central African Republic.
Well, that was Paul Ntuli, a research associate, Africa Center for Strategic Studies, National Defense University here in Washington. Now, CES 2024 is underway in Las Vegas. The massive trade event features the latest gadgets across personal tech, transportation, healthcare, sustainability, and uses of artificial intelligence. For more on the CES, let's go to Las Vegas, where viewers Tina Trin is standing by. Hello, Tina.
Hi, Vincent.
Now, let's start with, cars. We drive cars. There's been a lot of innovation around cars, and we're so curious as to what else is there on display about the cars we drive.
Yeah, autonomous cars, electric cars are a major theme here at CES, and we're starting to see more and more companies basically build out an ecosystem to support these automobile makers in improving things like the cameras and the sensors that are increasingly built into these cars as a standard feature. I was speaking with a company yesterday that creates thermal imaging for the cameras in your cars to better see at night. So things like improving visibility, of course, AI to help guide autonomous vehicles. These are all elements, disparate elements that can be better improved as more and more companies enter the space to support the major automakers and the autonomous vehicles of the future.
Yeah, sure. And it is, the cars of the future, for some, will be fully, electric and automated. But just not to throw a curveball here, but have you met people who are concerned that perhaps some of this is still a dream or a pipe dream for people in countries where things like electricity is not as available as, say, here in the United States or some other more developed countries?
Well, that's where you have companies who are looking at the battery technology for these types of cars and determining whether it's an option to perhaps retrofit some existing infrastructure in different areas in different cities with the technology. So not to have to create everything from scratch again, but to look at existing infrastructure like Wi-Fi, kiosks, and converting them into charging stations that will indeed become more and more necessary as electric vehicles start to have more of a presence on these roads. And again, these are technologies that ultimately solve for bigger problems like lack of transportation. If you have a car that can transport people on a predetermined route and do it safely, autonomously, that saves in emissions, fuel, and can work within existing infrastructures.
Yeah. And indeed, that leads to what? To innovation, invention, and of course, startups. Tell us about startups.
So I'm here today in a section of the show which showcases all of the international startups that have come to CES, and there are over 1,200 of them. So it's a really exciting chance for these emerging startups to get in front of potential investors and clients and really to showcase their product to the world and get that feedback, that initial feedback and guidance from potential clients and customers, just to see how people respond to these new products. And what's really interesting at the section called Eureka Park, where all of these startups are exhibiting, is that you have a very, very much an international flavor. So you see startups from Ukraine, from Turkey, from Asia, from Europe, the Middle East, all over the world, really proving that Silicon Valley isn't the only place for innovation.
Yeah. Now, talk a little bit about accessibility tech, because that's a thing.
So accessibility tech is this vertical of technologies that really cater to the disabled population. And as it turns out, a lot of the products that we're seeing for that are catered to the disabled actually can be beneficial to able-bodied people as well. I saw a pair of earphones yesterday that allow for hands-free control by using facial movements. So if perhaps you didn't have control of your limbs or didn't have mobility in your limbs, you could use the clenching of your jaw to control your phone. So really interesting new possibilities there, not just for the disabled, but for everybody.
Possibilities are endless, and it's good to see that technology is being designed to make our lives even better and to make it easier for others, perhaps who are disadvantaged in one way or the other. Tina, thank you very much. That's VOA's Tina. Thanks. That's VOA's Tina Train reporting live from the Computer Electronics Show in Las Vegas. Well, and that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us in Washington, thanks for watching.